afternoon. My name is Michael Bowen, and thank you for joining me today. Today we have got Jaco on the line. He's my partner at ZA Homes, and we've also got our accountant and trust and structure setup. That is Jaco Grobelaar from Prosperity. Good afternoon, Mr. Jaco. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing very well, thanks. It's great to join you guys this afternoon. I'm excited about our discussion today.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to jump straight in, but I'd like to actually hand over to Jacques to start with the first part, please. Jacques, if you wouldn't mind to kick us off.
Fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Jaco, thanks for joining us today. So we've been working together with you for quite some time now, professionally in our businesses as well as personally, right? You've set up some of our personal structures as well. And we'd like to touch on a few of those things today. But I think what's important for our audience as well is to get an understanding of who you are, right? As a person, as well as your business. And we are aware that you have written a book that we have read. And we'd like to know a little bit more about that as well. So if you can just give us a little bit of a brief overview.
Great, thanks, Jack. Yes, so ladies and gents, I'm Jaco Grobelaar, the founder and CEO of Prosperity Enterprises. And Prosperity Enterprises is a property structuring, property investment, and property education company. So to talk a little bit about my background, so I spent quite a bit of time in corporate before I moved into property full-time. My background is finance, so my last position in corporate was CFO of a wholesale company that operated across Africa. Academically, I did my chartered financial analyst qualification, and always have had a huge passion and love for investments. And then for the last 5 years full-time and probably 15 years part-time, I've been investing in property and also have been focusing on structuring property investors' portfolios.
Fantastic. I mean, yeah, that's where we all started connecting back in the day, was the fact that you're a property investor too, right? For us, that was important. We've met many tax specialists over the years. We've met many accountants over the years, and that's all good and well, but they don't necessarily understand the property game. The fact that you're as passionate as you are, and you have the exact same goal as we do, right? To acquire as much as you can over time and do it solo or as a team sport, right? And structures are super important, and something that me and you share is the accounting side, right? For me, up-to-date financials and being able to see what's going on is super important. So I just want to understand from your side, Jaco, you, Prosperity Enterprises, like what does your team look like currently?
So there's quite a couple of elements to the team, or segments to the team, and obviously a very, very big part of the team and what we focus on is the legal side, and that is where the structuring comes in. So we've got in-house and outsourced legal professionals in our team that assist and make sure that we give our clients the best service when it comes to structuring. And then the second part of the team is, of course, the accounting and tax side, where we also have in-house accountants as well as outsourced accounting and tax specialists to, on that side, ensure that our clients get the best service from an accounting and tax perspective. And then we've got the education side, of course, where we equip people to invest in property. That's a part that I myself am still very involved in, and that is to really help property investors, to give them the tools and the resources to build their own property portfolio. And that is also why the book Prosperity Through Property was written.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, we've gotten a lot of value from your team, especially. They assist us with our property transactions. And when we have questions, right, things change over time. And it's important that we have someone to call on that knows the industry and knows the legalities for structure and in the property game to help us make money and to keep our investments and our investors' money secure, right? So thank you for that. The education side as well, that's always valuable. We like joining your webinars and seeing what the latest is, because then we don't have to go do that homework, right? So we appreciate that there's someone that's switched on with a team that's focused on these things. So thank you. The book, so we've read the book. I want to just understand, where can people buy that today? I know where I got my copy, but where can people find out more about your book if they want to have a look at it?
So our book is available at this stage only in hard copy. but it can be ordered online. So on our website, prosperityenterprises.co.za, you can order the Prosperity Through Property book. It looks like this, and we are delivering all over South Africa. So nationwide delivery, anywhere in South Africa where you are based.
Fantastic. Yeah, I can highly recommend the book. It's a good insight to the property game as well as structuring. So yeah, if there's any of our listeners that want to grab a copy, I'd recommend it. Mike, I'm going to hand it over to you to maybe discuss some of our finer details on our end.
Thank you, Jaco. Yeah, I think it's weird that I can actually reach this book by hand. This is actually the book that Jaco wrote, and it's pretty much close over here, and it says a lot, obviously, about that. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into kind of our own structure, but probably more my own structure. One of the structures that we've set up, Jaco, with you, is that I've got a trust that owns a company, and the companies then own the property. So just from a perspective of benefits to what that gives to people, why is it that we would want to set it up the way? Obviously, I know, but if you could explain it more in simple terms, why a trust would own a company which owns a property.
So if I can say this to the audience, structuring is like a foundation is to a building. If you have a strong foundation, everything that you are going to build on top of that foundation is going to be strong. If you have a weak foundation, everything that you are going to build on top of that foundation will be weak. And that's what your structuring really is. So before you are even thinking of investing in property or building a property portfolio, you need to make sure that you've got the right structure in place. So the starting point for us always, and that I always remind my clients of as well, is that you don't want to own any assets in your name, and you don't want to have any debt in your name. And the reason why you don't want to have any assets in your name, I want to focus on two aspects around that. And that is the fact that if something had to happen to you financially, all of those assets are exposed. So if you had to be sequestrated, remember that doesn't always happen because you did something wrong. Sometimes bad things happen to good people as well. So you could have been doing everything right and something can happen and you can find yourself in a predicament where your assets are exposed. And then you don't want those assets in your own name. So from an asset protection perspective, owning any asset, and especially property in your own name, is a no-go for me. And then secondly, so of course, from an estate planning perspective or from a legacy or continuity perspective, because when you build a lot of assets in your name, one day you are going to pass away. That is the one thing that every single person still has to deal with at this stage. And when that happens, I'm sorry to tell you, but dying is very expensive. So if you are looking at, let's say you've got 20 million Rand of assets, do you know that you are probably going to pay somewhere in the vicinity of 5 to 7 to 8 million Rand in costs? Now, those are estate duties, executive fees, capital gains tax, transfer fees. So all of those things can be avoided with a correct structure. So from an asset perspective, you don't want any assets on your name because you want to protect it. And also you don't want to have all those costs one day when you pass away for those assets, before those assets can move to the next generation or to the charities or wherever you want to move it to. So that's very, very important. But then I also said you don't want to have any debt on your own name, because if you have debt on your own name, it makes your profile look overexposed. And then it becomes very difficult to build a significant portfolio. So when you have the right structures in place, it enables you to build a significantly larger portfolio. And that is why the structuring is so important. And the only way that you can cover those aspects that we spoke about now is to have a trust in the picture. So you have to have either a holdings trust that holds your share in a company, or in some instances, a property company that holds your assets. But having the trust in the picture is very, very important when it comes to structure.
Thank you, Jaco. It was a question that I had the other day, and I actually floored the person who was looking to invest with us when he asked me the question of how many properties do you own? And I quite blankly said 0. And he didn't get it, didn't quite understand why I would say 0, but he's like, but you're obviously a Bitcoin investor. You've got multiple properties in multiple countries. How do you own 0? So I don't ever want to own any properties myself. I don't actually physically own anything. The trust, which I'm a trustee of, owns the company which owns the property. And that's just a great way of passing it down the line, protecting myself from errant creditors, people trying to sue you for in stupidest of reasons. So that is the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing I wanted to mention as well, another way that you protect us, Jaco, is by being the independent trustee on that trust. And write our resolutions to ensure that it's all about board knowledge. Can you tell me, or tell our people a bit more about independent trustees, why it's important to have on a trust, and what it actually means, specifically around the National Credit Act as well?
Absolutely. So trust administration is critical to having trust in your structures, because if your trusts are not administered correctly, it can very easily be seen as an alter ego trust or a sham trust. And what that means, in effect, is that that trust does not mean anything. Creditors can pierce right through it because the trust is not compliant, and the requirements that needs to be fulfilled are not being fulfilled. And one of those requirements are that you have an independent trustee on your trust. Now, we always tell our clients, when we serve as an independent trustee on our clients' trusts, it won't be an individual that serves. And that's very, very important. It will always be a company that serves as the independent trustee. And then there will be a representative of the company, the person that would act on behalf of that company as independent trustee. And that independent trustee needs to make sure that that trust is administered according to the trust deed, to the best benefit of the beneficiaries, and that that trust is compliant. Now, having a trust to be compliant, there are certain things that needs to be in place. You need to have financial statements every year. You need to have tax returns. You need to have an annual general meeting conducted. You need to have, like you said, Michael, resolutions signed when decisions are being made. And so often, these things are not taking place in trust administration, which really exposes you, because it could make that trust invalid.
Fantastic. And one of the things I do love about working with you is, I mean, you mentioned a lot there. And if I didn't have you as a company doing all that, I would have to have someone else doing it for me. But I would have to be doing a lot of that work myself. I don't actually get involved in a lot of that work. Thankfully, you've got a lot of systems in place that automates a lot of the stuff for us. We get it all signed off every single year. And that's the next one I wanted to touch on, the audited annual financial statements. Those are so important for us as a company. Of course, we've got tax returns we've got to do. We have to have audited annual financial statements. Anytime we want to get a new loan and stand insured, we have to have those audited annual financial statements. So that is another part of your business, which you kind of touched on earlier, but could you elaborate a bit more on that annual financial statements in terms of what it means to investors who want to build their own portfolio, as well as to other people out there who are wondering what it all means for building up a property portfolio?
Something that I always tell my clients and often to audiences when we speak is that when you build a property portfolio, whether you are building it for yourself, whether you are building it with partners, you are in effect building a business, and you want to run that venture like a business. And for me, that means a couple of things. First and foremost, that means that business or that venture is in an entity of its own. Secondly, it means that entity has got a bank account of its own. And thirdly, that means that that entity has financial statements. So that's critically important. Entity, bank account, financial statements. That is just how you run a business. And that is how you should run your property portfolio as well. Whether it is a property portfolio that you're building up by yourself, or whether it's a property portfolio that you're building up with partners. Now, obviously, the financial statements also gives you a view into what is actually going on in your property portfolio, and like Michael has mentioned, it's a requirement, a prerequisite for you if you want to get financing, because banks are not going to finance you, and investors are not going to fund you if your financials are not in place. Now, for a trust and for a company, your financials at least need to be signed off by an accountant. And that is something that we are very intentional about as well, is to have an independent accountant review all of the financials and sign it off to ensure that those financials are set up correctly.
Thank you. It's the one thing that I do see and worries me sometimes when I look at other investors out there. They don't treat property investing as a business. They kind of see it as a side hustle almost, and they don't treat it with the respect that it deserves. And when things go wrong, they can go wrong very quickly. Fortunately, again, with you, a lot of the stuff we do is hands off to you, and I don't have to worry about it. It comes back, we review it, and it's getting to the point now that, you know, we're feeding in we're going to be feeding in our day-to-day accounting automatically into it at the end of the year. So it's very seamless when we partner up with people such as yourself. The one thing that last thing I wanted to mention on before I hand over back to Jaco is, as Jaco alluded to earlier, you know, you are also a property investor, and it's great being able to come to you. And you know, I do it a lot. I'll send you those WhatsApp and, you know, ask for a bit of advice on the tax or on the property deals even, or on the accounting. And that's one thing that's great about working with someone like yourself, is you know the property game. And so everyone else out there, I would definitely say you need to get hold of Jaco or Prosperity and have a chat with them about your own accounting. Jaco, I'm going to hand back into you. I know you want to look at the future of where we're going. We've spoken a lot so far about the past. So yeah, let's hand over to Jaco.
Perfect. Before I jump into that, yeah, it was always important for me that we partner with someone that shared the vision that I had from an accounting perspective, to have real-time data, right? A lot of people will promise you annual financial statements and audited financial statements, which for me are critical for the reasons that you've just pointed out. But I would like to know if I'm making money in real time. I don't want to find out at the end of the year that there are issues on properties, especially when we venture into things like Airbnbs and different strategies, things that have big implications if they're running in the red for too long, right? You want to be able to be on top of these things. So thank you for enabling us to get that view and making our journey easier. Thank you. So with regards to 2022, so I want to chat a bit about this coming year. So I will give you some indication of our plans first, and then I think it's over to you and I'll ask a question. So from ZA Homes perspective, I mean, we've got 3 big things on the horizon this year. Our primary focus is on growth for our partners and our property holdings, right? Our structure is to operate across South Africa in the various provinces, in our different partnerships with other property investors as our group. And the focus is to grow that, right? And you've enabled us to do that by giving us financial statements, by giving us structure, and that gives us the ability to move pretty quickly, right? You've got a strong foundation, as you pointed out. So that is our 2022 focus, South Africa-wise. And then we've got 2 big things coming this year, which we're very excited for, which we know plugs in as well with Prosperity's backing to help us grow, right? Which the first one is a stokvel, all right, to raise additional finance for our property deals and to give investors a cool vehicle where they can invest funds of various amounts and know that there is structure and protection and an ease of use for investing right into lucrative property deals. And that is something that we're truly excited by with the stokvel, but also something that has got a very large fiduciary responsibility, right? That's something that you can't toy around with. There are statutory requirements for that. And it's always my goal that we need to sort those things out first before we even start thinking about these things. So from our side, there's been a lot of heavy lifting in getting that off the ground. But I mean, it's always good for us to know that there's someone in the back end that has a fiduciary responsibility for the fact that you are independent trustee as well on our structures, and that you are capable of running something like that in the back end. Then the next one that is exciting as well, which there are definitely touch points, is the sourcing and education side that we're building, right? Where we are enabling everyday South Africans to get the education needed to source and hunt for lucrative property deals, which they then can on-sell to investors. And we ourselves will also be starting something similar to sourcing properties for others. So that's what's coming for us for 2022. I mean, Prosperity is a large component of that growth and to make sure that that growth is successful. But I want to understand from your perspective, like what is in store for Prosperity this year, and maybe for yourself as well as a property investor. What are you looking forward to, and what goals have you guys set for yourselves?
Great, thanks, Jaco. It's so exciting to hear about the great plans that you guys have, and really exciting to see how things are shaping. Now, from our side, firstly, I want to speak on the property space. Like you mentioned, I'm a property investor myself, first and foremost, and something that I always speak about is the fact that we are running a marathon. You know, I'm the vision and the picture that I have is not a 2-year or a 5-year picture. It's a much longer term picture. And everything that we do fits into that longer term picture. And a key component, and that's not going to change. That will be the same every year. The opportunities will change, and the approach will change, and the methods will change. But the bottom line is going to stay the same. Is we want to acquire assets at great prices and with great cash flow. You know, we want to add good assets to our books every year. And that's very much what we are going to do this year, like we do every year, is we find good investment opportunities, good investment properties to acquire, firstly, and then secondly, we make sure that we have a healthy balance sheet and healthy cash reserves to sustain that portfolio, and healthy cash flow. So cash reserves and cash flow to sustain that property portfolio and to sustain that growth and that size of that asset base. So that's from a property investment perspective. And then from a structuring and trust administration and accounting perspective, we are really excited this year. Our whole business has been built around bringing three key components together, and that is the investment side, the legal side, and the accounting side. And to really scale that and to focus on helping property investors in South Africa to achieve their goals of building and protecting wealth, and becoming financially free through proper structuring and through property investment.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I think our goals are very much aligned, as they always have been. And yeah, for us, I think you touched on something very important there, which is that this year we have specific goals, but they always fit into the larger picture, right? It's to make sure that the right moves are being done each and every year. It's not a sprint, right? We do have sprint goals, but it's a marathon, right? We're in here for the next 15 to 20 years, and it's important that we tick certain boxes each year, but that those things fit into a much larger structure, because as you pointed out, it takes time to build a 20, 30, 40 million rand portfolio. And if you realize after year 10, oh, my structure and my base is wrong, if that's what you intended to build, it's going to be super expensive to change that down the line. So it's important that people understand that this is with the starting point, and it's not necessary to have this complicated structure, but there are benefits and drawbacks to both sides, right? And it's important that people get adequate financial advice on that and do plan for the future. So thank you for enabling us to do that with eloquence, if we can sort of put it.
Right, thank you.
Michael, over to you.
Apologies, I had myself on mute there for a second. Yeah, so we're working on a deal at the moment right now that pays rather handsomely during the first few years, but at year 15, the payout is tremendous. And that's what a lot of people forget. You know, the compounded effect of property just grows and grows year on year. So there you have it, people. We've had Jaco Grobelaar from Prosperity, our accountant, our independent trustee, our advice go-to man. Go out and get his book. It is absolutely fantastic. It is definitely on my reading list right there. I have more behind me, which I can recommend. I hope everyone has learned something from today from this, and have a great day. And thank you, Jaco, and thank you, Jaco.